Yeah, my name is Greg Mott, and I've been coming to Bethlehem for about 12 years now. I'm going to do a little more introduction on myself in a little bit here, but I really want to thank Pastor Steller for working this out so I was able to come here, and I'm hearing that you've been introduced to more BUI missionaries in the past. Scott Anderson, the director of BUI, and then Jeff Noed. So I'm so thrilled after several years of talking and wondering how we can work this all out with urban missionaries and the SEM students and the college students and just a great flock that we have here. How can we balance all this out? I know you guys are super busy, so you don't get away too much, but we're excited about the work God is doing in the city, and I just want to quickly introduce myself, as I'm a country boy myself. I grew up in northern Minnesota, about 4 hours from here north, in a little town called Cass Lake. Is anybody here from Minnesota and understand where that's from? Not many, a couple though. So I grew up on an Indian reservation, believe it or not, the Leech Lake Reservation, and up in Cass Lake, there's a town a little farther west of there called Bemidji, and which maybe a lot of you, if you've ever hunted or fished, know more about. But Bemidji is surrounded by 3 of the major reservations in Minnesota. To the west, about 15 miles, you have White Earth, and to the north, you have Red Lake, and to the east, you have Leech Lake, and that's where I grew up. And I'll just keep from you guys asking me this question, because I know everyone asks this question. Well, are you native? And I'm not. I don't think I have any native blood in me at all. Well, how can you live on a reservation? Well, most of the reservations in Minnesota are what's called open reservations. There's only one closed reservation, and that's Red Lake, which is north of Bemidji. You cannot be a non-native and live there. So that's a whole other story of how the white man made their way into the reservations. We're not going to talk about that today, but that's where I grew up. And Cass Lake is actually one of 11 villages that make up the Leech Lake Reservation. It's actually the largest village there, population about 1,500 people. And like I said, there's 11 other villages, and Leech Lake itself is over 1 million acres, so this is a very large piece of land. And Cass Lake, like I said, is just one of the small ones. So I grew up as a minority, believe it or not. Isn't that interesting to hear in America from a white male? But I grew up on a reservation, and most of the people that I grew up with were Native American. And when I was growing up there, most of my friends were Native American until, best friends. I didn't know anything different really until we were about 8th, 9th grade, when we started seeing this divide that started happening with us. Native American people and white people we started seeing more and more clashes. As I don't know if you've ever heard of the AIM movement that rose up in the late 60s, the early 70s, but that's when I was growing up in high school and that, and we were really being affected by that, believe it or not, on the reservations as a result of some bad decisions that were made in South Dakota. But the fighting intensified as Native America in the late 60s decided that they were going to take back their traditional ways. They were going to renounce the white man and their God, Jesus Christ, as the white man's gospel. And it became somewhat of a militant time in that time as this disparity and the split started happening. So unfortunately, there started being a lot of tension. You got to understand this. When I was growing up, I was not born again until I was 35 years old. So by the time I left Cass Lake, I was a pretty bitter young man and vowed that I would never go back to my hometown, because not only did I hate that small town, but I hated Native Americans. So I tried getting through that part. But that's Jesus working in me still. So I agree with your testimony, All of a sudden you leave this bitter young man from this town. You have no hope or heart for other people. God breaks your heart. And all of a sudden, he sends you back to the people that you absolutely could not stand to be around. So that's my introduction into who I am. And then how I got to the city is just the most remarkable thing. I wanted Pastor Tom to hear about this, because I did not have a heart for the city. I'm a country boy. I love the country. When you grow up north, you have a gun in one hand when you're born and a fishing pole in the other. And that's this life. And we were farmers, so that's what we knew, how to plow the land, how to work on machinery. We were riding dirt bikes and snowmobiles at a very young age. A lot of freedom, ice fishing, and these were just natural ways. And the thought of coming to the city, no way. People are just crazy. And my friends to this day that never moved away from up north are scared to death to drive down here. They get high anxiety. They're just, I can't do it. And so it's really, it is from the Lord that not only would he take me back to the people that he called me to, which took years to figure out, but that he would call me to the city. And not only call me to the city, but give me a love for the city. That is really from the Lord. And I honestly can stand up here and tell you, I love the city. I love being able to get on the light rail and going downtown and going to theaters. And I love the nations. I love doing evangelism. So all the nations are right here, and there's so much to learn right here. And God placed us in a great neighborhood. So we are just loving this time of our life. So I tell people that really, I am no more than a street evangelist. I came to Bethlehem, like I said, about 12 years ago to pursue missions through the Nurture program. I thought my wife was a Spanish teacher, so I figured as God was calling me into missions that we would go overseas. But through the Nurture program, through perspectives and that, God started right during that pivotal time actually changing the course that we were on and showing me that all this time he had called me into Native America, and to work with Native Americans. So I call myself a street evangelist because I'm not a pastor. I have some training in missions. It hasn't been overseas. It's all urban, actually. And as far as street evangelism, that's really my heart. That's where I cut my teeth as a new Christian. I love going out into the streets and sharing the gospel with people and sharing tracts and getting to hear their stories. And now it seems that God has just taken this street evangelist, and instead of going all the different streets, he has just put me in one particular area that's just south of here, a few blocks. So now I am still a street evangelist, but now I just go back to the same streets, the same 3 blocks every day. So imagine that if you've ever done a street evangelism. I just go back to the same place over and over and over. And some remarkable relationships have birthed as a result of that. So it's totally natural. After spending that much time, I've been at Little Earth now, which I'm going to talk about here in a little bit, but I've been there for 5 years. So it would be very natural that if we were going to birth any ministry, that it would come right there. So we have, by God's grace, we have men's Bible studies going on in this community. We have a ladies' Bible study that is happening there. And we've started a fellowship right there on site that functions like a church. However, we do not have elders or deacons, and half the congregation, if not more, is still in addictions and fighting a lot of issues. But we have a flock, and they love the Lord. And that is a sweet, precious time for me. I can't believe I'm getting this emotional after all these years. One of the sweetest things that has happened recently to us is there's this gap in the church for Native American people. I can't speak for other groups, but churches do a remarkable job of being able to gather up the kids from 5 to 12 years old, right? We got vans that go to these places and load up kids by the loads and bring them back to church. And by the time they're 12 years old, we start losing them. And then unfortunately, we don't get them back until they're in their 20s oftentimes. And by then, so much damage has been done to work into their lives. It takes almost a specialist to start working with people on an individual basis to pull them out of some of the addictions and just the lifestyles that they've been living. So there's always been this big gap. It's the teenage years. So one thing that we've done recently, which has just been the biggest joy for me, is we've started an outreach over at East Phillips. We rent that park out, or the gymnasium there, and we've been inviting the teenagers from Little Earth to join us there, and we do it through basketball. Native people love their basketball. They just can't get enough of that. Wherever they are, you're going to be sure there's going to be a basketball. So we rent that gym, and I let them know that I pay for the gym. I give them 2 hours of basketball. I get 5 minutes of their time. And I tell you what, when you got 20 Native kids, teenage years, I mean, you want to talk about stretching out a preacher. because trying to get them to settle down, trying to get them to listen to the message while the ball is constantly bouncing or they're back and forth is really, it really takes some time to develop the skills to be able to do that. But what's exciting as they get smart, because they realize, I'm going to talk for 5 minutes regardless, and if they don't stop talking, it's going to go for 10 minutes, because I just sit there patiently and wait till they're done talking. So they're getting really smart. It's really fun. Shut up, they say, shut up, let them talk. So they just, now they run right to the bleacher that used to be all over the place. They all go to the same bleachers they're supposed to go to. We got the older teens, they're quieting down the younger teens and telling them, let's let them talk, let his message go. And I got to tell you, I am speaking for the first time to several people that have never heard of who Jesus Christ is. I don't want to give you a preconceived notion that they've never heard of Jesus Christ. We're not reaching an unreached people group, but we are reaching a misreached people group. They don't really understand who Jesus is. They've been given all these little ideas, but they've never been given an opportunity to hear a clear gospel presentation. And I just thank God, and I just leave that teen group just giddy. So it's a family ministry, and we have other volunteers that help us, and we always need help with that. On Sundays from 2 to 4, we meet at East Phillips. So we are teaching the 5 to 12-year-olds. We use Children Desiring God curriculum, believe it or not. That's highly contextualized, but that's what the kids are hearing. And then I teach the teens, and then after that, I go over to Little Earth, back to Little Earth, and that's when we have our fellowship from 4:30 to 6 o'clock, where we start with a meal, which would be a very traditional way for Native people to start something with a meal, and we sing. Like I said, we take communion, and we study the Bible together in more of an oral fashion than a preaching to. But we're in the book of Acts, and that's just been a fantastic experience for us all. So yeah, Little Earth, I just want to clarify something. Little Earth is not a reservation. And I forgot my phone down there, Tim, so just tap on that finger when it's getting too late, because I thought I could see that clock, but that I can't. I could through the windows, but from here I can't. So, there's one up there, is that right? 124? All right. So Little Earth is not a reservation. Little Earth is HUD-subsidized housing. Has anybody heard of Section 8 HUD-subsidized housing? Okay, I just need to get that into your head because it functions so differently than a reservation. And if you're going to go to the reservation, if you're going to work at Little Earth, and then you're going to go to the reservation, you're going to see some differences here that you need to understand so you can correctly reach the people where they're at. And so Little Earth, I'm just going to read this history of it, is a 9.4 acre, 212-unit HUD-subsidized housing complex in the urban industrial core of South Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's home to nearly 1,000 residents, 500 of whom are under the age of 21, and it was founded in 1973. Little Earth is the only American Indian preference project-based Section 8 rental assistance community in the United States. Its residents are 98% American Indian, with ties to over 20 tribal nations. Little Earth has been the center for Native American support since its inception and has been recognized as a leader and innovator in providing services and education to the American Indian community in South Minneapolis. So I just would want to correct something. It is still a 212-unit housing complex, but the 1,000 residents is probably closer to 1,500 residents. Native American in Indian country, they're very transient people. So it's not uncommon to go into one house and have 2 to 3 families living in one home at a time. So we know that these numbers are very much on the light side. But I just want you to think about that for a minute. Imagine going to a 3-block by 3-block area. Imagine where you live and 1,500 people living in that area. It's extremely intense. It's very condensed. And there is everything going on inside of there. We have some of the highest gang infiltration inside of there. The Native mob, as I'm sure some of you have read about, as the recent crackdowns that came across North America with that group, and they're always around. And there's been an epidemic of heroin recently that has just taken not only the reservations but Little Earth on. and has caused so much destruction in these communities with the overdose levels and just the addictiveness of this drug. It's off the charts from so many others. So we have a lot of issues. It's one of the primary things I've become, and it's very sad to see, but I've been doing a lot of funerals in my ministry, which I never would have ever suspected as being a missionary that I would be doing so many funerals. And they're challenging funerals because oftentimes many Native Americans are not fully convinced that they're Christian, and they're not fully convinced that they're traditional, so they have one foot in each. And so when we do a funeral, oftentimes the Christian minister will be there and the traditional medicine man will be there. So they're very interesting ceremonies of how to work the gospel in and all that, and being sensitive to that. So, introduction to Little Earth. Yeah, so, I hope day to come back here. There's so much more to talk about. I can only chew off so much, but that's really that's Little Earth in a snapshot. And as I go through my talk here, I'm going to talk a little more about this. And when am I supposed to be done? 1:45? Okay. So today, I just wanted to go through some lessons that I've been meditating on for a long time, and it's in the book of Luke. It's in chapter 10. So I'd really like you guys to grab your Bibles. And I'm really thankful. I see Scott Anderson, my boss, is in the back there from BUI. And I just say that because for many reasons, which I'll talk a little more about. But if you have any complaints about my talk, take them to Scott. If you have anything that, thank you, and bring those to me. That's good. So Scott, thank you. He's back there on that side. Take it. But I don't want to move forward without just thanking Bethlehem Church as a whole and BUI. I mean, what a remarkable agency that we have right here within Bethlehem that holds so tightly to the global missions, rightly so. But oftentimes, the urban people can get forgotten about. So I'm so thankful that right within here, we have an organization that sends urban missionaries, and we get to benefits, which the global missionaries I don't think often do, but we get the benefits of having a wonderful church with elders and leaders that we can turn to when things are getting tough. So we are so blessed to be part of this church, and I thank you for supporting BUI. I thank God for Scott Anderson all the time and the blessing he's been to our family. And Jeff Noad, who you've met, we work with on a weekly basis, if not sometimes a daily basis, with their organization. So we're so thankful for Jericho Road. So I have some lessons. You guys in Luke 10? And we're just going to go from 1 to 8. So why don't I just read that? After this, the Lord appointed 72 others and sent them on ahead of him, 2 by 2, into every town and place where he himself was about to go. And he said to them, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Go your way. Behold, I am sending you out as lambs in the midst of wolves. Carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Whatever house you enter first, peace be to this house. And if the Son of Peace is there, your peace will rest upon him. But if not, it will return to you and remain in the same house, eating and drinking what they provide, for the labor deserves his wages. Do not go from house to house. Whenever you enter a town and they receive you, eat what is set before you." So yeah, these are some lessons that I have learned. I've laid them out. I have 5 lessons that are from this text that I'm speaking directly to this group. I'm speaking to those of you that are going to be pastors, those of you that are going to be missionaries, and some of you will be, like myself, street evangelists. Just have a gift to be able to gather people together and go into communities and share the gospel with. And they're very different in a lot of capacities. So they're wonderful giftings from the Lord, and I just encourage you to hone whichever one the Lord has given you, and we know there's many others. But my lesson 1, is if you are going in as a missionary or a pastor or an evangelist as a white male into a predominantly non-white area, please don't send 70 white people with you. You can laugh at that, because we do that oftentimes, don't we? We go into Little Earth. How many times have I seen this? I've seen it from this own church. It's scary to see you guys coming. I know you're prayed up and you're evangelized up and you got your tracts and you're ready to go, and God does use that sort of evangelism in there. But you got to understand what that looks like when a whole bunch of white people land into a predominantly non-white area. It's very scary. And I'll tell you why it's even more scary for some Native Americans that were born on reservations, because there was a time in history when we had what was called boarding schools, and that's exactly what we did, is we rounded up Native Americans, we took them from their homes, we put them in schools, which definitely sent a message to parents that they are not able to raise their own kids sufficiently. We can do that for you. So we'll put them in schools, we'll educate them, we'll cut their hair, we'll make them speak our language, and we'll teach them our ways. And some of the elders that we work with are very aware of this time in history, and it gets very scary for them when they see that happening. So please, whatever people group you're going to reach, please read history. Please understand the people that you're going to do that with. There's always two white guys coming into Little Earth, Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, whoever it is, and they're generally loading up kids into the vans and taking them away. And oftentimes, in their zeal to get numbers, they forget to ask permission from the parents. And all of a sudden, even though a lot of times the parents don't have a tight as rein as we might have on our kids, all of a sudden they realize their kids are disappearing and they don't even know where they went. So we want to be very careful about this. Number 2 lesson, and so I get that right away from the Lord appointed 72, but I got to tell you, Jesus' first great evangelistic mission out, that he sent people, he did not have any non-natives. They were all Jewish people that went to Jewish people. Number 2, pray. And I can't overemphasize the power of preserving prayer. And when I talk to you about missions, I want you to understand that I believe prayer is the first step. And when God breaks your heart for a people or a nation, the instant result is always prayer. And if you feel you are truly being called into missions or being a pastor or even getting a team together to go out into the streets of this city, I want you to gauge that calling to the burden for the people by prayer. James Frazier was a missionary to the Lee Sioux people, and here's what he said. I used to think prayer had first place and teaching second place. I now feel it would be truer to give prayer first place, second place, third place, and teaching fourth place. Number 3, I think I'm going just about right on the verses too. Find a person of peace. This was probably one of the most challenging things that we had when we break into a community. You got to understand, when I came into Little Earth, I didn't come in there with any preconceived notions. We're going to talk about that in the next one. But it took me years to just find a man to talk to. A healthy man that was not addicted to drugs, because you got to understand that oftentimes the way our welfare system is set up, the HUD subsidized system is set up, it penalizes people for making money. So oftentimes the women are the head of the household with no income, so that's what's shown on the HUD statement, and the men are out working for cash or almost invisible to the community. It's very hard to find men. It's very hard to build relationships with them. So I was in there for over 2 years before I finally found a man that would actually have a conversation with me. And it took me several years after that, or several months after that, of having conversations with him to even pull out of him that he had a Christian background. And then even more time with him to figure out that, to see if he was interested in doing a Bible study. So lesson 3 is find a person of peace. And whoever this person is in the community, he should live there. He should look like the community. He should be someone who the community trusts. He should serve as a gatekeeper to the community. And they should be at least a co-leader in the community. The leader needs to look like the community the same way Lydia did in Acts 16. So we found our guy after several years. His name is Kelvin. And Kelvin is this exact man of peace that we had been praying for. I'm sure Scott remembers the emails when it was finally birthed that this happened. We could, or not the emails, but the newsletters we sent out. We could not believe that God had finally delivered the man of peace. And a remarkable thing about this particular man is we wanted to do our Bible studies in a room at Little Earth called the elders' room. But no one can be in the elders' room except elders. Well, wouldn't you know that Kelvin is an elder, and he actually oversees the elder room. So not only is Kelvin a key man, but he actually has the keys to the elder room. So when we want to do our Bible studies, when we want to do our fellowships, whatever we want to do within there, because of the man of peace that we have found, we get to use a room at Little Earth that's not available to very many people. So praise be to God as he just continually reveals himself to us. So find the person of peace. Lesson 4, don't come up with something new. Please don't bring anything with you. In fact, I would leave you to ask something behind. Leave something behind. And I say this as if there was a mirror put up to me, because I don't want this to come across rude, but leave your white middle-class paternalistic attitude at home. And I hope that doesn't come off too strong, because I really say it to myself all the time as I keep reminding myself that we're just bringing worldviews into a community that isn't the same. And all too oftentimes we want to fix things. We want to throw money at things. We want to throw programs at things, and it's not fixing anything. I want you to look at, just quickly with me, verses just to show where I come up with this. Verse 4, carry no money bag, no knapsack, no sandals, and greet no one on the road. Verse 7, and remain in the same house, eating and drinking what they provide, for the laborer deserves his wages. In verse 8, whenever you enter into town and they receive you, eat what is set before you. Do you guys hear this? Jesus' own commandments to his disciples is telling them to bring nothing, and that is so valuable. You got to understand that Little Earth is a fully functioning community, and I'm going to be assuming wherever God sends you, there's already some functioning community going on where you guys are, and it's your job to go in as a listener and a learner and find out how that community is functioning and find out what is the real need, and don't come in there with preconceived notions of what you think the need is. But I beg you to go into these communities and sit with the people. Listen to the people. Ask them questions. Become their friends. And give them the chance to be your friends. We are supposed to be about healing the sick and saying to them, the kingdom of God is coming near you. And I got to tell you, from what I've been seeing from the churches coming into Little Earth for the past 5 years, we are missing that element. We are coming in all too often, our churches, as a social agency. We're bringing in clothes, we're bringing in food, we bring in all these things, and then we sprinkle a little Jesus on top of it, and we come in, I call them hit and run ministries. They come in, they hit, they run, and they go back to their churches and celebrate the great work that the Lord did among the people. And I don't want to ever sound like I am not for that type of ministry, because God uses whatever means he will. But please understand the importance of coming alongside people and building a relationship with them and finding out truly what the need is. My time is short, so I'm going to just skip some of this. That has been one topic that I could talk on for a long time, about how to come in and love on people in a proper way. When I came into Little Earth, I did not bring anything with me. It was the hardest thing in the world for me to quit my job. I'm a construction worker by trade. We're used to getting things done, running large crews and seeing a product at the end of the day, and to go into Little Earth and just sit at the Youth Development Center hour after hour, and sit in the teen center hour after hour, helping kids do crafts, helping kids do homework, a number of things, it drove me insane to just be able to sit there like that for hours, seemingly doing nothing. But I got to tell you, what's happening all that time is those kids are starting to love you. They're starting to ask you questions. You're helping them with homework. Pretty soon you're meeting their parents, right? All this time the staff is seeing you show up day after day as a volunteer. You're not paid. The staff is starting to take notice of you. The staff is starting to ask you questions. And then pretty soon that level of staff that you're just dealing with at that lower level leads to pretty soon you're being invited to sit with the president and the housing director and all of these people you're starting to meet. And then when we go in and we ask them if we can start a Bible study, we're not asking to take the people out. We're asking if we can do it within their own community, right? And by the time you've built a relationship with people, they say, absolutely, come on in. They might not agree with what you believe, but they know you have a heart for the people. They know you care for them, and they're not going to turn away that kind of help. The last lesson, be consistent and go for the long haul. Communities in poor urban areas do not change overnight. Urban sociologists say it usually takes 2 generations for lasting change to remain. Now, you don't have to stay somewhere for 40 years, but it's imperative if you say you're going to be there that you show up. And that would be where I would leave you guys today with one thing that I've seen time and time again. I haven't even been able to talk to you about our experiences on the reservation, but how many churches, I can tell you, funnel through these reservations, funnel through Little Earth. It's amazing, especially Minnesotans, how so many churches are weather predictable. As soon as it gets warm out, we can't wait to go save the poor Indian. It doesn't matter if it's a reservation or Little Earth, but boy, I take most of the summer off in Little Earth, to tell you the truth. I do events. I take kids other places, fishing, wild rice, and we do all kinds of things because I can hardly take it in there. And all the churches that show up for their one night bang, they come in with their big bands and all their money and all their clothes, and then they leave and they make big stories about how many people they saved, But I get to stay back, and I get to see the wreckage of the people that are being lied to by so many people, coming in and making a preconceived notion that because they got baptized or because they said a prayer that they're saved. And it's not happening. It's not there. So I want to thank you for your time today. And like I said, I got so much more I could love to share with you guys, so maybe sometime you'll have me back.